I'd rather have 100 vinyl records than, a million MP3s, because it's always going to be tangible. You're always going to have something in your hand, artwork. A lot of people don't even read credits anymore. Liner notes, they don't pay attention to who worked on something. So many legends pass away, and it's like they go unnoticed.
Mm, that's deep. That's deep. Cool. So today is Sunday, September 20th, 2020. Who are we speaking with?
Moises Montoya. How's it going?
How are you? Thank you for doing the interview. This is from GoBounceFM.com. What is house music for those that don't know?
House music, it's a culture, a way of life, um, a place, a place to feel home. Something people feel like they're isolated, they don't have nowhere to go. Just a sanctuary. That's amongst a genre of music, but it's deeper than that.
How did you discover house music?
That's a good one. Pretty much as a kid, listening to the radio, scanning to the radio, all those Friday, Saturday night shows, Emerald City, what was it? Hot before Hot 97, or I think it was Hot 103 or whatever. All those early New York college stations, and then just it was in the hood everywhere, just house parties.
Where did you grow up?
In Newark, New Jersey.
Gotcha. Um, uh, uh, and then from the radio, are you a DJ as well?
I DJ as well. Yeah.
So then how did you make the transition from being a fan? Well, actually, before we even get into that, what is Satellite Records?
Satellite Records was the equivalent to Track Source and what's the other one? Beatport. I would say it's the Beatport of vinyl. I mean, you had thousands of vinyl at any given moment. You walk in, you had international DJs shopping. It was the mecca for New York City as for house, techno, jungle, and all subgenres, that went along with like electronic dance music at the time. So it was a very important record store for New York City in the 90s and up to the early 2000s.
And where was Satellite Records?
Bowery Street. It was near the old CBGBs, like a block away, and then they moved in around 2000. They had invested in a bigger store, but it stayed in Bowery.
And how long were you there?
I was there from 99 till I want to say 2001, 2002.
Gotcha. And then talk to us about record retail. What does it take to be successful in selling records? What were the keys to success of Satellite Records and being a successful retailer?
Pretty much breaking in records before, the major artists will break in the record. From the aspect of the record store, they had promos, but CDs weren't like, what it is now. MP3s weren't it is now. So all these guys were playing internationally, over here in New York and around the world, and this was a hub. So they would stop here before the European tour, or a lot of like the US artists as well, New York artists. So definitely breaking in records to the top DJs, before they could break it into the rest of the world.
And I remember going to record stores in London, and I remember Friday nights were bananas, where everyone's trying to cop stuff before, like, especially Friday around like 4, 5, 6 p.m. before the party started. Was that the same frenzy at Satellite Records too on a Friday or Saturday night before the parties?
We had that, yeah. It was pretty much like Fridays and Saturdays, and on special circumstances, sometimes customers would let them shop, overtime, or give them a few hours, or they came in like either earlier and they called ahead or something. They would come right after a gig and shop. But definitely where it was more prominent too as well. I had the pleasure of working also at Track Source for 2004 for about a year, and
Oh,
there, yeah,
talk about
and
that.
there,
What is track source for those that don't know?
Track Source is the deep house underground, uh, disco, everything along house music genre. That was the one-two place. They had some rare groove, some maybe new jazz, some trip hop, but everything was pretty much on the foundation of house and New York house and disco and that movement.
And what did you do for track source?
I sold. I was a seller there. Sales.
But
I did
track
that.
source was digital only, right?
No tracks. I'm sorry. I apologize. Not track stores. Dance tracks.
Oh,
Forgive me.
dance tracks. Okay,
Dance tracks. Dance
dance
tracks.
tracks.
Sorry.
Okay, all right, dance tracks.
No,
So,
no, dance tracks. Yeah, yeah.
all right. So then let's remix the question. What is dance tracks?
Sorry about that. Yeah, dance tracks is exactly it was the New York spot for underground, house and deep house and disco.
Compare and contrast working at Satellite versus dance tracks.
Totally different. I mean,
How?
satellite felt like more like college. There was a group of us, party every night, and and it felt more of a younger thing, And then dance tracks felt more refined, older, distinguished, and it just felt like the later years of to that movement.
Mm, mm. Um, Speaking of house music, we talked about house music. What is soulful house?
To me, soulful house is it's a house. Just close your eyes, you let go, deep jazz influence, black influence, um, Latin influence, um, very sophisticated, um, inspired music. That speaks directly to the soul, and it's just music just to zone out and let go to, and heal it, and it heals.
And some people like genres, some people don't like categorizing music into genres. How do you feel about the soulful house like category? Is that legitimate, or do you think it's not necessary? Or you think it puts it in a box, or it doesn't really bother you?
It doesn't bother me, but I feel like it for the younger generation, they took over. I won't say they took over, but they kind of like, yeah, they took over the word deep house. So a long time, deep house very distinguished, specific sound. Um, and then came the younger generation, like the Jamie Jones and the other movement, um, and they pretty much started categorizing their version of like deep tech house into deep house. So I felt like more the older crowd or like the more soulful side of it had to distinguish it, and it became more, like that soulful house became what deep house was. At
Mm.
least to my opinion.
And then talk to us about record retail. Um, did people try to steal records, and if so, did they get away with it, and how did they do it?
Oh yeah. I mean, personally, I never caught people stealing, but it was something that you would see at the end of the day, like, okay, why is the sleeve empty, or the jacket is there? There's no record, or there's a wrong record in there, or there's a box set. They took the best cut out of the box set. Every so often, I mean, I know there's situations like, cameras came later on and people got caught that way, but it was very hard. It was very hard to catch people stealing records, but it was prominent. I mean, people will find a way, to have something they need. So,
And who are some of the people you met in terms of famous DJs at Track Source or at Satellite?
um, at Satellite, I want to say Lil Lewis, Hector Romero, Sandy, uh, Carl Cox, Eric Murillo, um, you name them. Even the drum and bass world, a lot of drum and bass acts. Paul Confold from the progressive world, um, everyone, so many years ago. This is like already like about 20 years ago, but I could say like a good chunk of many well-known acts. Richie Hawtin, you know, um, and then many regulars. Honey Dijon was a regular at Satellite. She's grown to be an amazing artist now. Hector Romero was a very staple at Satellite. Danny Crivet, Francois, they were regulars as well. Jonathan Peters, and so on. There's so many of the New York-based artists that were regulars there.
And then at some point, you made the transition to working for Louis Vega. Was it right after Satellite?
It was right after Satellite. Obviously 9/11 happened. There was a big impact in New York and retail and everything.
How did that impact New York retail and house music?
It was literally like overnight sales of records from, I'll just use Danny Crivet as an example. He would walk in maybe once or twice a week and buy like a stack of like 100, 200 records. Francois, same thing. To a lot of these people, just went from like half, or a lot of these DJs disappeared for a while. And then during the same time, the CD movement started creeping in. So that instantly started taking effect where people were like, okay, if I get something on promo on CD, I'll hold out, to the CD. And eventually, yeah, sales went. I mean, Satellite grew really big, and I think with the impact of 9/11, distributors suffered as well, and things, almost like the housing market, things crashed, and everybody took effect, and that's what happened with Satellite. Sadly, and then they started laying people off. I was one of like the first wave of people that they laid off, and eventually, they closed about a year later or something. But
oh, really?
but yeah.
So 9/11 had a direct impact on the closure of Satellite Records.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
That was main attribute to it. Yeah.
Wow. And then what happened to Dancetracks?
Dancetracks, I think it just became digital, became so much stronger than vinyl. It was almost like if you held out 2 more years, you know how vinyls come back now, but I think same thing with Vinyl Mania. It's so difficult if you're not selling. He was in a prime. Stephen Prescott was in a prime location now, which was like I think a Starbucks on the corner, and I can imagine it's very difficult to maintain the high point of vinyl sales to what it became. So that is why I feel like was part of it. That digital just took over, and to be in a retail selling vinyl was difficult for those couple of years.
And then for a while, New York was a mecca of nightlife. There were tons of different parties everywhere. What were your favorite parties to go to?
Oh man, like I come from the early rave culture. I mean, maybe second generation. Like I was very young going out to see Louis Sound Factory Bar. I was like 14, 15, sneaking in. My friends were dancers. They were cool Willie Ninja, and so sometimes I just get in with no problem. And then around the corner was also Disco 2000 at Lamplight. So Wednesdays was like, okay, either I'm gonna rave it up, or I'm gonna, be at house it up. So I in both aspects, But I feel like it was more to me. It wasn't about the venues being magical. It was DJs back then. Like I would go so many dive spots I can't remember now, from Meatpacking District, just to seeing so many just random DJs like Mars, like when it was forget the venue it was, like Tyrone Francis will be playing there, and Joski was in the rave scene. So many DJs, but like the prominent parties, like for house, it was Louis. You know, Louis was a Sound Factory bar. That was like the destination, at least for my era. You know,
In fact, that what is a Sound Factory bar for those that don't know?
Sound Factory bar was a party or club where Underground Network hosted a night every Wednesday. And Louis Vega was the resident DJ where he showcased classics downstairs where you could hear Camacho, um, so many other DJs playing classics in disco. And upstairs was like Louis Vega's home, you know, playing cutting edge, you know, what we all listen to now as house classics, you know, and maybe many people try to emulate that early MAW Louis Vega sound, but yeah, that was Sound Factory Bar on a Wednesday with Barbara Tucker and
Don
sorry,
Welch.
Don Walsh. Yeah.
Um, and then there were other parties as well that followed after Sound Factory Bar shut down. What other parties did you go to?
I think I grew more into other genres where I was into drum and bass. I was going to more drum and bass parties, but I know there was Discotheque, there was Central Fly, there was Twilo, there was many other, you know, spots that came throughout after that. Vinyl also, um, but like as strong and prominent as Sound Factory Bar with that kind of acts that went through memories, I don't think you can compare, you know, the other parties to that in the house world.
Mm, mm. And then what happened to New York City nightlife?
I think the cost of living happened, you know, everybody, where if you think about all these venues were like Tunnel, Warehouse, everything was pretty much in a warehouse district where not too residential, but people just wanted to, you know, venture off and build more real estate and push, you know, nightlife out. And that's what happened once Lamplight, Tunnel, Roxy, all these venues started disappearing because I feel like they were being pushed out, you know, by real estate and the price of rent, everything was soaring, and that had a big impact, you know. And I think what made that movement return was Cielo, you know, many years later. But Cielo was almost something pure and reminiscent to that on a smaller scale. But it delivered quality music, quality sound, you know, good atmosphere.
What is Cielo for those that don't know? Describe the venue, the club, the location, the sound.
Cielo was 18 Little West 12th Street, Meatpacking District. It was a club after APT, after Filter 14, after a few clubs in that area that had already disappeared or were about to disappear, and that area was almost declared like dead, you know. Came this club in the Meatpacking District. Meatpacking District for a long time was people buy meats by bulk and they'll cut up meats in the street. And in the middle of the night, you'll see just trucks of meat trucks selling, packing stuff to sell. And Hart, you know, in the middle, they opened up Cielo. And right after that came, or during that time, Gamsford Hotel, many boutique clothing stores and retail, and it started flourishing. And then as time goes on, the same cycle, you know. Real estate comes and goes up and pushes people out. So I feel like he left right at the right time. You
um, Talk to us about COVID-19. What effect do you think it'll have on social dancing and clubs going forward, if at all? Is dancing and dance culture and dance music dead as a result?
I feel like COVID is something everyone, not necessarily with the name COVID, but had some crazy, like something like this was going to happen sooner or later one day. If it wasn't now, it was going to be later or before, but it was something that was bound to happen. And luckily, I mean, rest in peace, so many souls who passed away. It still could be worse. I mean, as a magnitude of something like this happening, but in terms of nightlife and dance culture, me being now, part of that, doing events, anybody affiliated from DJ to club owner to people who want to host a large gathering, we're considered almost like the bad guys because, now everything is safe distancing. You can't create an environment like that because it's unsafe. Um, the toll it might create a lot of people that doesn't want to go out anymore. I believe after this, a lot of people are dying to go out and live a normal life, but I think it's created a fear in a lot of people as well, saying, okay, I saw a family member pass away, or how can I celebrate this? People are still dying. And it's kind of like that unknown. It's scary. I mean, it's selfish to say, okay, let's wrap it up. We want to start moving again and let's get things going how it was. But I believe it's never going to be the same. I've reflected during these 6 months looking at videos of past countries and parties and festivals. I'm looking how crazy, you know, all these people on top of each other, even the airports. And now it says that stigma, like, wow, this could be like another outbreak. This could be, the start of like something else that can go wrong. And it's pretty much the unknown, and it's like, okay, we have this cure. Are we really going to be 100% after? Or the people who want to take the cure, people are anti anything the government wants to give. So yeah, I think COVID is it's definitely an unknown, but it's brought a lot of people together, in terms of family. I mean, I can imagine there's a lot of DJs and professionals and people that are just working on a hamster wheel, and all they knew was just work, 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 and this made everybody stop and reflect and say, okay, it's a little bit more to this. Let's take time and call people, check in on them, spend time with more family members, check in on them, and I think at everything that's the positive I take away from COVID. That to a degree it made people stop and even for a split second made people analyze and say, okay, there's more important things in life. Let's care about more people. Let's take time to even check in on someone. So I think the most positive I could take away on that is yeah, just people reflecting more.
Speaking of reflecting, let's reflect on this topic. I guess pre-COVID, um, when parties were still happening, how important is a DJ residency in building a DJ's career?
uh I want to say, if you want to build your career in your home, a residency is very important. If you want to support your hometown, it's very important. But what's more important now, I feel, is if you're a DJ producer, the production is more important, because without production, now, and no offense, and I don't want to interpret this the wrong way, there's so many DJs that, how do you distinguish them? Like now, before it was different. It wasn't that many DJs, and everyone had, their signature imprint on how they played, the style they played, or who they were associated with. But there's so many chameleons. They'll hear your set today, download all your tracks, emulate you for 3 weeks, and now they become you. Opposed to, there wasn't that technology, or even like, let's say if you had a collection of classics, you were special on that, because to pick up a whole disc Paradise Garage set was impossible at a certain time, or very expensive. You pay $25 to $100 for a record. But I feel, to distinguish, and some people may say I'm wrong, because then you're creating you're diluting the art of a real producer, you know. But if deep inside, if you're a producer DJ, I think it's very important production to back up your art, and then the residency as well to support the roots of where you want to, you know, lay your grounds. Because many people, um my interpretation of, like, let's say Tony Humphries, I could be wrong, but I feel like he had a very strong following, New Jersey, New York, and then Ministry of Sound came. He took a residency there, and I think when he returned, his followers kind of like, they weren't there anymore as strong as, you know, when he was here. And I think that's something that I take into account, and I always reflect on things like that. Like, it's your roots and your people at home who you feed first, and then, you know, then you go away and you know, spread the sound. But yeah, I believe residency is very important. There's people that just try to take all the gigs and play, and you know, they do 1 hour sets or 2 hour sets, and at the end it's just not really laying a foundation, you know.
Which brings me to my next question about how do you discover new music? When I go on Mixcloud and Soundcloud, my feed is just filled with stuff and everything is soulful deep, hundreds of mixes, DJs I never heard before. And um, are there too many DJs? How are we supposed to discover new music and discover new DJs when there's so much out there and there's not really a good way to channel and filter? And like you said, everyone is emulating the famous DJs and the tracks that they're playing. How do you discover new music, and what advice would you give to people to how do you navigate that space? Is it navigable?
I feel yes and no, because it's overwhelming. I feel the same way. There's sometimes, like, I just go to my comfort, you know, my old school sounds and stuff that makes me feel good. But every so often I have to say, okay, there's a whole world of there of stuff that you have to pay attention to, because it's just a way to move forward. But either you go by your favorite DJs, not necessarily older DJs, but like newer DJs, and you look at maybe the track listing and you pick a few records from those track listings, and you discover those artists, and then you say, okay, let me see this artist's discography. You check out their discography, and then you see who their influences are, and then you check out, okay, these sounds. And I mean, at least that's my method. And then you just start venturing, because you know, you could spend 3 hours just following, chasing one sound, you know, and by the time you realize, wait, I was looking for something else, you know, you start discovering. And a perfect guy like that is, you know, the king. I look at him in awe when he looks at music, is Giles Peterson. You know, there's few people that's like, how do you retain so much music? This guy is like a walking encyclopedia. Like, he can dictate you classic jazz, new jazz, reggae, disco, everything, and even knows the people that played on the records and what the records they played on and what bands they were part of. And then you look at him, you're like, wow, this is insane, you know. But at the end, it's, you drive yourself crazy if you try to think that way, and try to think you can discover everything. You can't. And it's just something you have to accept and say, okay, there's some of them I'm going to absorb, there's some I'm going to miss, but yeah, just scanning your favorite artists into who they like, and then discover some more stuff from there.
And then speaking of music, how do you organize your records?
Uh, that's a good question. um, I like buying a lot of used flea market, you know, digging for like older records. I'm not a 45 guy. I don't chase 45s, because that's another avenue. Like, you look at somebody like Kenny Dope and you're like, no, I'm not even gonna try. He's got an insane collection. Organizing, I think it's by mood, by what you feel, or what you're gonna play, or what you think is gonna take you, and you start separating, you know, folders or a chunk of that music by kind of like vibe, you know.
New York and New Jersey have house music, well, had pre-COVID house music scenes. Um, but they were very different. I'm speaking specifically about the deep soulful Afro house space.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about the Newark and the Jersey house scene.
I always say this, like it's so unique that I wish there was a documentary on it. The sound is very specific, and you can
Let's
play
stop
house.
here. What is the Jersey sound?
The Jersey sound is I always say something like a Stevie Wonder a cappella with a Quentin Harris beat. You know, something that's pumpy and something that's classic on top. That's they like something familiar and something that's pumpy. But yeah, it's a funny thing because sometimes Jersey just stays in Jersey. They want to support Jersey artists. It's very underground. Not very too many large venues in Jersey. I think the last one that was fairly decent was Cricket Club, Jihad. Many people have a residency there. But yeah, it's very. I think Jersey hasn't changed in all its years. It's very specific.
Is that a good or bad thing?
Um, it's a bit of both. It's Jersey because it makes Jersey, so that's a good thing. That they're true to the end, like how they want their style of music to be played, and they're very loyal. If they don't like you, they won't go support you. Um, but it's definitely an older crowd. It's hard, I think, to get for the soulful house stuff to get a younger crowd involved more. Young crowd likes more of like that Baltimore. There's another sound for it, a name for that sound now, but it's more like kind of like that Baltimore house kind of stuff that they like.
Mm. Did you go to Zanzibar?
I went after it was Zanzibar. I went. It's funny. I always wanted to see it, but I was too young during the Zanzibar years. And there was a rave there once. I think it was in '95. There was a rave there, and I was like, okay, so this is my chance to check it out. So, and I think it was called Brick City Club. After Zanzibar was called Brick City Club. So in the building, I mean, I got to experience it. I saw the booth. It was kind of like the Roxy, Risen. It was a very cool looking club. I mean, I wish there was something like that still around. There was like an atrium, like a side room. There was a room downstairs. It was very, very unique, especially for Newark. But yeah, I got to experience it after.
Describe the perfect DJ.
Sorry,
Oh, describe the perfect DJ booth.
the perfect DJ booth. Uh, a lot of space. An area for guests, for your guests to be there. Dark, risen. Something similar to like I think one that I make a reference is Ministry of Sound. I don't know if you ever got to go to Ministry of Sound, but to me that's one of my personal favorite booths. Um, it's all up to date. You can play vinyl, you can play CDJs. They have rotary mixer, Pioneer, whatever mixer you want to use. Has a bar. It's one of the most comfortable booths I think around the world that I've experienced.
And why do you prefer raised versus on the floor?
Um, I'm a fan of more distance. You want to feel the vibe, the crowd, but I'm not too much a fan of somebody directly in my face.
Spilling based on your records.
Yeah, yeah. I like it's a little bit more hidden, a little bit more reserved. Kind of like how it was at Sound Factory Bar. It was also risen and also vinyl shelter. Yeah, I'm more of a fan of like that. That was my first kind of experience. Like DJ booth, you weren't really supposed to talk to or touch the DJ or ask for a picture. They were it was sacred. It was like, okay, he does his job, you do your job, and it was kind of like that.
Yeah, how do you feel about people hanging out in the booth? Some DJ booths feel like VIP lounges now. And how do you talk about that?
And this is why I say the one at administrative sound, because there's a space for them on the side where they feel like they're involved, but they're not directly bothering the DJ. But now this culture with the DJ booth fans, it's like it's almost like a gimmick. Like if you're an upcoming artist, almost like a boiler room, you got to have 50 people behind you to prove to the crowd, even on on TV or wherever they're watching you, that you're a good DJ, depending on how many people you have behind you. It's annoying. It's very like needy. And and it's very just gimmicky. The minute they find another DJ to latch on and they join that. But yeah, too many people in the DJ booth is a no-no.
Um, which country or city has the best club scene? Because you've been around the world many times.
It's a very delicate one because I want to respect all the countries and people I dealt with. But in that nature, every nightlife scene is amazing. But for enthusiasm and love and passion, Italy is definitely one of the most loyal, in terms of supporting artists and generations. It'll be like the father, the son, the cousin. There's generations of family that just keep supporting artists. But UK, for me personally, is one of my favorites, just for energy. Um, they like Scotland. They party hard. They have a good time. It's fun. Sound is also very good in UK. Um, Japan for its purity. Um, they have Yuri's everywhere you go. The most smallest club has a rotary mixer, Yuri. Amazing sound in the smallest venues. Everywhere is a little different, but passion wise, I would say UK and Italy,
Oh,
definitely.
which clubs in Italy? Do you remember?
A lot. Italy didn't have too many long-standing clubs. They had like Room 26. They had I can't remember the name right now. There's a few venues that.
Which cities then? Just name the cities then.
Oh, Rome. But in terms of energy, because we would do when I was touring, we would do a lot of outdoor venues as well. Naples, Neapolitans are like the most hardcore, fans. Um, but yeah, Italians they use a lot of like pop up spaces. Could be on the beach, it could be in a restaurant, it could be um, some parking lot, some you know, they just find great areas to do events.
So talk to us about touring. You toured for a while. How many years did you tour?
I toured from December, I believe December 2006,
Mm-hmm.
till October 18th.
2018.
Yeah.
Wow,
2018.
I didn't realize it was so long.
Yeah.
And who did you tour with, and what was your role?
I toured with Louis Vega. I was his tech roadie. Um, his name speaks for itself.
And what is a tech roadie for those that don't know?
I did his DJ setups. He had a very specific setup that he liked in terms of DJ booth. So I set up his tech writer, set up his mixer, monitor placement, monitor requests, his EQs that he liked to use, his CDJ placements. So anything specific to how he wanted his sound is set up for his shows.
And then how long before the gig would you have to set up that stuff?
Um, An ideal gig, maybe 3 to 4 hours before, if we got in early enough. But sometimes, we'll jump off a plane, check in real quick, go to sound check, come back, have dinner, take like a 1 hour nap, do the gig, take like a 2 hour nap, go back to the airport. So ideally, yeah, if I had like 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours, it was ideal, the sound check.
And what are some of the countries you travel to?
Uh, Brazil, Japan, Greece, Ibiza, Portugal, Korea, um, you name it, pretty much everywhere except India. Africa, South Africa. Oh, I gotta give love to South Africans as well. That's another amazing place for the sound.
Oh, do you remember which cities you went to? South Africa?
Yeah, Joburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, Soweto, um, and some other, maybe like 10 other cities I can't remember right now.
For those that don't know, what is the club scene like in South Africa?
The club scene is very raw. It's for them, festivals are very common. They can do 10,000 people, 5,000 people like nothing, and in an outside arena. Um, but I feel like um, South Africa nightlife is it's like what hip hop is here. Hip hop is mainstream here. Not diluted. The sound is not diluted. I mean, but it's just like it's the reverse. It's the popular music in South Africa, house, and like it is, like hip hop is here.
Mm. And what was the high point of your time as a roadie? Do you have a particular gig or venue that was like, you know, wow, this is why I do this?
I had a few when a lot of the live events when Louis would do like Roy Ayers, BB Winans, um, so many live acts I can't remember right now. So many great artists. But uh, specifically was an in store he did in London with Jocelyn Brown. She
Wow.
came like impromptu, like, and she just wailed for like an hour, killed it, in a small packed record store in Phonica Records to like 100 people packed inside a record store. Um, yeah, mainly like the live shows with a lot of these great acts. Those are the ones.
And talk to us about clubs. Um, you've seen a lot of clubs. Um, what are common mistakes clubs and club owners make in terms of either setting it up or managing clubs?
Um, that they're not in it for the long run sometimes, for a specific sound. They embrace the sound sometimes, and when it obviously they have to make money, but for the soulful sound, it's not mainstream. So it's kind of needs a different attention. Kind of like Cielo, they did very well. But a lot of people they pick it up like a fad, like okay, this doesn't we like this, but these commercial acts do better for us, and that's what we're gonna do now. Hip hop and these commercial acts, and then they're abandoning it, and then it goes back to square one. Opposed to where early New York nightlife, they allowed the sound to build 5, 6, 7 years like a residency, and have a good duration of feeding it to the public, opposed to like okay, we're gonna pick it up, we like it, it's not working for us, and they dump it. you know so I think that's one of the mistakes, and also another mistake is they spend so much money on decor, couches, furniture, and then they say, okay, we have this money left over, let's put into the DJ booth, and they don't start with the DJ booth first, right? Where I feel like the sound is the most important thing, the system and the DJ booth, and then everything should be secondary. So that's another problem. A lot of clubs could happen. Problems because I go on the road and I say, okay, send me what do you have in this booth? Like I want to see your specs of like what do you have in house, and it'll be like these cheap self-powered monitors. It'll be like one CD player, one turntable, and then they think like, okay, can you work with this? I'm like, no, you're crazy. You have to rent all this stuff, and then they get upset. They have to rent all this equipment they don't have because they don't invest in that sound from the start. So I think that's one flaw that they worry more about the lights and the decor than the sound.
Would you ever open and operate a club?
No,
Really?
no, yeah,
Wow.
it's I think it's blood, sweat, and tears. It's very it's scary. Because look at COVID. Let's say COVID for example. What are these people going through right now? How do you tell staff that you build up as a family that okay, now is the time, we can't take care of you no more because there's no clientele. Hopefully, we'll be back, but what do you tell the landlord? You spend all this money investing in your venue, but you pay a rent to someone, and now it's like 6 months. Like, do you continue paying, taking that loss, or now it's like, okay, I gotta cut my losses and walk away from this venue? It's very scary. This COVID made me realize that nothing is certain, especially now in a club or something like that. It's huge risk, huge risk.
Wow. Wow, that's deep. For the man that's all the clubs around the world, you're like, yeah, I wouldn't do it.
If I had a billionaire backer and he's saying, okay, with your vision, create a perfect environment, yes. But if I had to, I think invest out of my own money and create something, it's very scary. And people should get more credit than they're given when they do create a perfect environment in the club because it takes a lot. It takes a lot.
So if I had $1 billion and I said, hey, Moises, let's open up a club. Describe for me the perfect club.
The perfect club, the perfect club would be something similar to Ibiza, where you can have, in a daytime sunset setting, beach environment, beach club, and then at night you can have like a nice dark old school room with a crazy system and an underground vibe, you know. So the nice, pretty fanciness will be in the daytime, and then the underground appeal will be in the nighttime.
Mm, mm.
So somewhere in those two will be a marriage.
What is Ibiza for those that don't know?
Ibiza is the mecca of of clubbing. I didn't really reference it before because it's its own unique thing, you know. It's constantly changing. What Ibiza is now compared to 15, 20 years ago, it's not the same. But in terms of nightlife and DJ development and culture, it was a place, and it is a place that every summer the most amazing DJs around the world will gather, and they will play or host nights, and people just go and spend vacation or summer and enjoy partying in the sun. And in Spain, it was in Ibiza, Spain, so it's an island off Spain, and just live there or visit or enjoy a weekend. But it's definitely the mecca for this music.
I just hit me where we last met, Ibiza.
There you go.
That's where I last saw you in Ibiza at the TMB LLB gig. It was at they played together. Um,
Oh, Dot Villa, was it
I don't
top of the
remember the
castle?
name of the venue. I don't remember the name of the venue, but that's what it was.
Wait, was it inside or outside?
It was inside. It was inside, and Anana opened.
Oh, it was a Louis residency. It was the ritual. It was at
Yes,
yeah,
that's the last time I saw you.
yeah. It was his residency in Ibiza. Yeah, that was a good night. Yeah,
That was a really good night. That was a
yeah.
really good night.
You tell me about Ibiza. What do you feel about Ibiza? Because
So,
was that your first time?
no, it was my second or third time there. So, I didn't go to Ibiza in the heyday of what it once was. So it was interesting to see, um, and it's also interesting to see when when you're rolling connected, versus when you're going not connected. It's a whole different
Right,
experience,
right, right.
very different experience. Um, and so it was really interesting to I felt like the Ibiza that um, I can't think of the guy's name now. Uh, but the Ibiza, the guy used to do the shroom parties. I forgot his name. Maybe Graham, something like that. Um, the Ibiza that they talk about from like the '90s is very different from the Ibiza of today. So I
Yes,
feel like I don't know what that Ibiza was. It was nice, but it felt like
more
giant
hippie-ish.
corporations, huh?
More hippie-ish.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like giant corporations had taken over. The
Mm-hmm.
clubbing was an industrialized business. You know, it's €100 to get in, or €50 to get in. The hotel prices are out of control.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it felt very much. It didn't feel like Body and Soul. Let's put it
Right.
that way. Yeah,
Right.
it didn't feel like Body and Soul. It was very nice and very elegant, and it was fascinating to see the indoor and outdoor parties. And that's nice, and the weather is fantastic and all that. But it was a very different experience. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's what I feel like. Originally, I never experienced Ibiza in the '90s, but the version of the '90s where you had Murillo, rest in peace. He had
Yeah,
his residency. Def Mix,
yeah.
New York held it down. Roger had his residency at Pacha.
Mhm.
And New York kind of like dominated for a long time. They held it down, especially Pacha, which is the mecca of all clubs as well. That's still there, but it's definitely got very South Beach.
Yes, that's a
Think, yeah,
perfect way to say it.
everything has changed now for more lifestyle, money, VIP. Um, and I get it. I mean, that's the way the world has turned. I mean, you have to make money. DJ fees keep going up. So how are they going to pay these artists? They have to create other means of revenue.
Hmm.
So they create a whole VIP area, bottle service, the whole experience, and that comes hand in hand.
And you also toured with when they did the MAW gigs together too, right?
Yeah, we're Louis and Kenny. Yeah.
So describe what is MAW for those that don't know, and then describe what it's like to watch the two of them play together. I've experienced it, but tell people what that's like.
Masters at Work is Louis Vega and Kenny Dope. It's one of those marriages of two artists coming together that only happens, I think, once every 50 years. But for house music culture, they lay down so many hits, so many jams that a lot of these aspiring DJs and now well-known DJs look to as those were a foundation for them growing up. Myself, I was hooked on MAW records. So yeah, for early '90s house, that was a staple. The aside from Strictly Rhythm, but for artists, Masters at Work was the one artist that delivered.
And then talk to us about one of the gigs you did with them.
One of the gigs,
It's a memorable one.
I remember one that was probably one of my last ones I did with them was at Doubt Villa. Was in there's a castle in Ibiza, and on top of the castle, they did an event space. This IMS group um, in Ibiza, and part of the showcase they wanted Louis and Kenny to play back to back with Martinez Brothers, and after that back to back, they wanted them to do back to back with was it Amen? Dixon.
Hmm.
So they did a back to back with Dixon. So it was Martinez Brothers and then with Dixon. And I think that was a very magical night because it was outdoors and to see, Martinez Brothers with Louis and Kenny playing together, on I don't know how many CDJs there were, like I think there was about 10 CDJs, um, something crazy like that. So it was very cool. And then Dixon also, which I'm a fan of a long time, Innovisions and that whole crew. But yeah, that was one of like the most memorable ones for me.
Mm. And then you stopped touring, and now where do you work?
Yeah, I stopped touring in October 18, and I needed some kind of a change. Um, and I started working for Circle Line. Circle Line is for 75 years a staple of sightseeing cruises through New York City. And I was lucky enough to be the director of events, and I would put on parties and work with promoters and do events during the summer, along with other kind of companies as well. But so it's pretty much a floating club in the summertime.
And then talk to us about if there's a DJ or promoter that wants to do a party. Um, how do they reach out to you? How does the process work? Is it like their party or your party, or they rent a boat, or how does that whole thing work?
It depends. Sometimes if I feel like they're a well-known act or something I want to do in house, I will bring them aboard I will book them like a talent.
Hmm.
And I have promoters where we do the events.
Hmm.
And if not, they want to do their own event, they come out to me. I tell them it's like a rental fee. They rent the boat and they keep everything like a club. And also I recommend also for sound, Jason Ojeda. Jason Ojeda is also a staple in New York City for having great mobile sound systems and doing great events. And I think that's part of like the secret ingredient to when a lot of these promoters and people do events, having good sound on the boat as well.
Mm.
So it's like a raw event space.
Hmm. Hmm. What's next? What's the future of house?
The future house, I think, is going to be more in your home and your car, and maybe for the short term, I think more people are not going to give it such a bad stigma where like, oh, I don't want to go out a dark, dirty club, or I don't want to be around drunk people. Now they can embrace it in a different form because they create the environment, right? So now it's your home, and you have, I think people have more like together parties where they invite friends over. So I see it growing in that aspect. House, I think, is going to be around forever because I'm still listening to house records from 90, 92, and they're still as relevant as music that they make today. So disco records are still relevant today. So house is like the child of disco. So yeah, I just see house growing more and more because at the end of the day, uh, a lot of these guys, for the commercial sound, after they bleed it to death and they can't, use it anymore for all the big commercial sound DJs, they go back to the foundation. So I just see house continue to grow and just be a forever genre.
And what advice would you give to up and coming aspiring DJs?
Uh, Work your craft, master your craft. Don't find shortcuts. Uh, have a mentor, and someone who's come from the scene that you're trying to get into. Because you may not know it all. You think I have X amount of followers, but that's just a gimmick. Look at TikTok now; it's going to disappear. Now all these TikTok famous people are gone. It's like they got to reinvent the wheel. So I just say patience, master your craft, and follow true to the sound that you're into. Don't follow gimmick, and don't chase money, because it's not gonna be pretty when it doesn't give you the results you want. It may work for some people, but I think long term you have to be true. So as long as you're true to your sound and you master it, that's all you can do.
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to talk about?
uh hmm, let's see.
How do you feel about the whole like MP3 versus analog debate?
Well, I'm actually hearing a new debate going on now that mastering wise, they're still mastering records super loud. So people are complaining that they're not hearing the records in the club anymore. They're hearing it in their car or at home. So a lot of people are complaining about mastering being too loud now. So I'm like, this is becoming something to take into account. So at least like from the drum and bass and more electronic world, but so things of the way records were being made and pushed because you wanted the maximum sound, to deliver on a dance floor. So, but I think at the end of the day, nothing beats vinyl. I'm not saying you have to be a purist, but the feel, I'd rather have 100 vinyl records than a million MP3s, because it's always going to be tangible. You're always going to have something in your hand, artwork. A lot of people don't even read credits anymore. Liner notes, they don't pay attention to who worked on something. So many legends pass away, and it's like they go unnoticed.
That's deep. One other question. Which 5 people do you nominate that I should interview next?
I would say pick one DJ from maybe 5 cities: Toronto, New York, Chicago, LA. I don't want to name DJ specifically, but
you don't want to play favorites.
Yeah. But there's so many, so many great artists, but definitely someone who's embracing the sound and the new with the old.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day, and I'll keep you posted when it goes live.
Thank you, bro. Be good.
You too. Take care.
Later.
Later.